Well, the state ensures that you have some measure of civilization. It therefore takes monopoly of the use of force, and therefore automatically takes control of religion. And religion is then used to support the state. This means altering its doctrine and editing its literature. This is what happens. It makes no difference which form of state organisation you have. It could be a monarchy, oligarchy, democracy, whatever. But if you don't have something, even bad, you don't have a civilization. So the state both rescues us from some evils and presents us with some evils that we may know and come to understand good and evil and adjust our values accordingly. But we cannot change the state in the sense of take away its legitimacy of use of force. Or we'll have anarchy, or so we're led to believe, and nobody's going to seriously take the risk of finding out. And if you could survive happily in such a situation, well, you wouldn't survive vis-a-vis some external body, state, or power base that would rather have your resources than left with you. There is then both a need for force with your own people, against your own people, and against outside interference. The competitive use of force between nation states impoverishes both parties, and as we know, the brunt of the cost is always taken by those that are not the elite. There is, by the grace of God, no solution to this. If there was, we might have overcome evil and had a super world, possibly a mortal equivalent to heaven. But no school to bring us from our infantile, childish state, ignorance of the values of good and evil, and therefore remain spiritual children indefinitely, if God were to condemn us to such. It is not that we're claiming the state knows better than us in imposing some moral order on us, albeit political correctness and some perversion of whatever religion we might otherwise have had, but rather that much that we could accomplish by joint and civilized action will not be achieved without it being imposed. Quite simply suffer from a failure of collective action, whereby it is so often in the interests of the individual to be the free rider, if they can. But the freedom to be a free rider means the end of civilization. It's the tragedy of the commons, isn't it? If we put too many cattle on the commons, we end up with an arid piece of land. And cattle that are no use to anybody. And it's always in the interest of the individual to put more on. It's in the individual's interest to go faster where he thinks he can, as far as the individual is concerned. It's in the individual's interest to take what someone else has earned, where he doesn't feel that the other person has a just right to it, or simply feels that he has a greater need himself. A law that you're not allowed to kill each other, and it's imposed some sort of punishment that's pretty severe, seems to be largely effective at reducing the number of murders. Though it does have a cost, of course, that we may have to put up with people we don't like. It's not that we don't seek justice. On the contrary, we seek to benefit from principles like the rule of law and availability of legal redress to all, and societies may or may not have such facilities. So we can imagine some societies much more humanely and kindly organised than others. But whatever our imagination, we are very concerned that we do have society, a civilization. Even bad dictators are better than none. This world is not designed to be a place you wish to stay in forever. It's designed, I think, as a schooling, a spiritual schooling, that you may come to find your true self, what you value, what you hope for, who you are to be, ideally, as you come to see it through experience here. That you come to know and understand the foundation of life eternal. What is important? From the point of view of achieving, keeping such. Thank you, Dad. Well, I'd had to redo the last 4 minutes of this recording from this 8 minutes to 12 minutes. So I'm adding that now, sort of transcript from the original that's a bit more easy to follow, I hope. Although it will have lost its natural flow. Better that than not be able to follow it at all. So here we go. We can consider taxation. We approve of us all contributing. We don't, though, of course, necessarily approve of how much we personally are contributing, and others. We're not agreeing necessarily then with the burden of taxation or what it's necessarily being spent on. But we can see that we'd be so much worse off if the funds were not there to achieve at least the things that we do agree with. And they wouldn't be there given the failure, as we call it, of collective action. But for some government as such, in other words, imposed collective action. Of course, there's always the issue of what's the best government and from whose point of view. Having a lovely day, some of us having a lovely day, all of us having not too bad a time? The combinations are endless, aren't they? And, of course, the choices may not actually be there in reality. Some choices are not clear on the outcomes until you've experienced it. For instance, the example of rent control in Britain after the Second World War to keep the price of rental property low basically destroyed the rental market in the UK. And council housing had to come to the rescue on a very large scale. History has many lessons to teach us, and saves us making the same mistake again and again, perhaps. Or at least quite the same mistake. People have many different goals, and each assess the worth of their society accordingly. But what we definitely don't want is a freedom that gives us no society at all. And in that regard, the societies that we do have are an absolute miracle. How we've ever arrived at such. How some sort of market economy can allocate resources in amazing ways as regards production, distribution, and the level of consumption. Well, for at least some individuals in society. But it needed government, and it needed property rights, security, and some sort of conformity imposed by membership. For instance, the principle in the stock exchange used to be, my word is my bond. If it wasn't, you completely lost your membership. You could no longer trade on the stock exchange floor. So it may not be imposed by the government, but certainly imposed by the organisation, which of course was supported by the law of contract, the law of the land, and so on. There are people that have argued that we can manage with no government at all, but not, I think, terribly convincingly. And as I say, nobody's really going to risk finding out. Thank you, Dad.